Welcome to our Traveling Thursday webinar. We're happy you have joined us tonight. We have a vast library now of traveling videos that you can peruse either on our website or on our YouTube channel. I think most of you know we are traveling to Palau tonight. And so let me just give you a little bit of an overview of what we are doing tonight. Some introductions, and we'll give you a little bit of an update on the world travel situation. And I should say welcome to those who've not joined us before. For some of you, and I know I recognize many names that are coming back every other week. Then we're going to switch over to the Master Liveaboards crew that's on the call with us tonight here. And they will be talking about where Palau is and how to get there. We will be learning about the Palau Siren and about the top dive sites in Palau. At the end, we will have time for question and answers. So at that time, we will encourage you to put all your questions in the chat box, and we'll go through them. We will mention our fall contest. Actually, I will mention that even earlier, and then we'll also give you an idea where we're going in 2 weeks. So, Fly and Sea Dive Adventures. This is our crew, and I think I'm going to just take a minute to put some titles to the names. Irene is on the call with me tonight here. She is our manager. And moving down in the circle, Michelle. So Irene and Michelle are handling most of our individual bookings. And Edina, our group coordinator, and myself, we are handling the group bookings and most of our marketing. And then Julie at the bottom, she is very important to us because she handles all the money. She's our accountant. We have been a dive travel company now for almost 25 years. So there is a lot of experience between all of us. And like I said, next year we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary. And we pretty much do the world of dive travel. I think there hasn't really been a destination that we haven't done. Some obviously more often than others. Partners all over the world, liveaboards as well as resorts. We are IATA appointed, which means we can issue our own tickets and are being kept apprised of schedule changes and details like that frequently. We handle group bookings. Most of our group bookings are done through dive shops, and sometimes they don't always make it onto our website, but most of them you can find on our website. And then we do individual trips when you want, where you want, how long you want as well. I mentioned that we have a fall contest, and for those of you who were on the webinar 2 weeks ago, you already know this. Those who weren't with us 2 weeks ago may not know this, but we are giving away a 5-night stay and dive package at Volley Beach Resort in Fiji. And you earn entries the more often you participate in our webinars. So if you were here last time when we were in Fiji, so to speak, you earned 3 entries. And then tonight earns you another entry. And if you come back every time in the next few weeks, you will earn more entries. Our main draw will be on December 9th, when we will actually be with Master Liveaboards again. So they're bookending almost our contest at that time. COVID has poked a hole in the world of dive travel, but let's not focus on where we cannot go. Let's focus on where we can go. And there's a huge list of destinations that we can travel to, many of them in the Caribbean, but then there's also some additional destinations in the world, among them being Palau, which we will be traveling to tonight. Vaccination, super important. Testing, every country has different requirements. We are staying on top of all of that. So when you book through us, that is part of the information that you will be receiving from us. Travel insurance is more important than ever. And I think masks are not going to go away. They are just part of traveling, probably for the unforeseeable future, I would say. So, without further ado, we're welcoming Alex, who's sitting in Phuket in Thailand right now, and Eric, who is sitting in Palau. Take it away from here.
Good evening, everybody. A brief introduction. We've got myself, Alex. Hi, guys. We are in Thailand. It's a little bit early in the morning, so I've got my coffee with me just to wake me up a little bit. And we're also joined by Mark. He is one of the owners of the company and is joining us today. And we also got Eric, who is our operations manager in Palau. Eric knows Palau inside out, I think, don't you, Eric?
Fairly well. I've been here for 7 years now.
The first thing that I kind of wanted to point out to you guys before we get into the destination. So we've introduced a book with confidence policy. And what this means is that if you have or make a new booking with Master Liveaboards on any one of our boats, Palau, Indonesia, Philippines, Galapagos, any boat that we have, we promise to give you guys a cash refund if you can't travel because of COVID. And when I mean can't travel because of COVID, it's because you've caught it, or your home country has introduced travel restrictions, or your destination country has introduced travel restrictions. So this really, I hope, gives people the confidence to make bookings with Master Liveaboards, because we want you to come away with us to the destinations that are open or will be opening in the near future. And we promise to give a cash refund if COVID gets in the way. I'm going to hand you over to Eric, and he's going to give you the rundown on Palau.
My name's Eric. I've been the operations manager and the cruise director here in Palau for almost 4 years at this point. I've been living in Palau for the last 7. Oftentimes I'm sure you'll say, you'll tell people you're going to Palau and they're going to say, where in the heck is that? We are an archipelago, northwest corner of Micronesia. The closest island would be Guam and then the Philippines. The neat thing about Palau is we've got a huge barrier reef system. If you take a look and you can see the islands, you can see that fringing barrier reef. We have over 1,100 kilometers of fringing barrier reef surrounding Palau. The major population centers are Babeldaw, which is the big island. That's where the airport is. Then we also have Koror, which is where the densest section of the population is. And that's where all the boats come in and out of. Malakal, where the hospital is, Nerabesang, and then Peleliu to the south. Beyond that, we have over 500 islands in Palau, and only 7 of them are actually occupied. Far to the south of the reef, we actually have Sansaral, Pulawana, Hatobe, and Helen Reef, and those all live well outside of the barrier reef system. For traveling here into Koror, right now, as of now, the only flights in are on United Airlines coming in via Guam. However, during normal operations, we have China Airlines, which flies in via Taiwan, and then Asiana, which flies in via Korea. At the moment, only the United Airlines flight is happening, and that's only coming via Guam. Also, during regular operations, the United also flies in via Manila. For those of you coming out of Canada, really, the China Airlines would probably be your best bet because it's a quick hop from Vancouver to Taipei and then Taipei here into Palau. Upon arrival, there's a 30-day tourist visa. There's no charge for the visa. You don't need to pre-book anything. And when you come in, you'll actually get in your passports the Palau Pledge, which is your pledge to take care of the local environment here. And that goes in, that is your actual visa into Palau. As far as finances go, everything happens in the US dollar. It's the only currency here in Palau, and all the ATMs dispense US dollars. Languages spoken is Palauan and English is widely spoken. Transfers to and from the airport are included on the day of embarkation and disembarkation. Do not come to Palau thinking you'll get a taxi from the airport to the hotel. Most flights arrive late at night, and B, we don't really have taxis here. So the best way to get to and from the hotel to the airport is by arranging that with your hotel. So our current entry requirements, everybody, you must have a proof of a complete COVID vaccination. You need to do a negative COVID test within 72 hours of departure. And then there is a test on arrival, and then a further test on day 5. At the moment, since they've just paired those two together, you won't pay for the test on day 1, but on day 5, the test is $50 to cover both fees. And then lastly, you must do another test for 3 days before leaving Palau. And single tests, last we knew, were $30.50. But as flights open up and as things change, testing requirements and fees could change very easily as well. So the Palau Siren herself, as Mark will say, built for divers by divers. She was designed by a group of divers. We can accommodate a maximum of 16 guests. We have 8 cabins based on double occupancy, 2 cabins that are permanently queens, and 4 cabins that are permanently twins. And then we have 2 cabins that can be either twin beds or queen size beds. We have a covered outdoor dining area, which is where we will eat all of our meals. Big saloon, which offers our cocktail bar, large flat screen TV. The dive deck is a great spacious area for kitting up and getting in and out of our kit. With a nice sun deck for relaxing with a shade structure that we can put up and take down depending on sun and weather. All of the diving on board Siren, as you can see, we've got our skiffs alongside. Because of the location in the way the reef structure is in Palau, that trip on the skiff can be anywhere between 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. Now, because of that, we have 2 really nice skiffs. We've got a 36-footer and a 29-footer. So once you set up your gear on day 1, we'll transport that down to the skiffs. All diving, is done off the skiffs. So we take the skiffs out, back roll in. So you can only need to set your gear up once. You'll never have to worry about walking around deck on Siren or climbing up that ladder while you're in your dive gear. Here we've got our saloon over to the port side. You'll see that's where our bar is, our hostess area. We also have a nice coffee station with an espresso machine, as well as drip coffee and hot water. Those are our old couches. We've got some nice new couches there, but pretty much looks almost identical to what you're seeing there. This is one of our twin cabins. So this is one of our permanently twin cabins. As you can see, we've got a nice storage area for you guys, a little closet in the back left-hand corner. Each room has their own in-suite bathroom as well. Camera charging stations. So we have 2 main camera tables and the ability to create more space as well. All the charging and all electronics be done up in our saloon area because we always have a rotating night watch or someone permanently on deck and on shift. We ask that you please don't leave things to charge unattended in your cabins. All the power on the boat is 220. Most people's chargers can accommodate 220 or 110. If you need to have 110 power, you can check with any of the crew. We do have some voltage converters. We do have a couple of 110 outlets that we can utilize there as well. There is our dive deck. So as you can see, you've got nice broad space. The tanks are set up. And then, as I said, on day 1, when we start diving, we actually move your gear down to the skiffs. And so we'll do all the diving off the skiffs themselves. But aside from that, you can store everything inside. There's our sun deck with our lounges. What you don't see displayed right now is our sunshade. So the diving here in Palau, as you can see, the Babaldob is up to the north. Where we focus our diving is the RISL, or the Rock Island Southern Lagoon. This is where all the most famous dive sites are. This is where we have those really steep drop-offs, where we have our famous dive sites of Oolong Channel, German Channel, Blue Corner. Outside of the reef system itself, we do go down to Peleliu, where we can have some very, very strong currents, but some really wonderful pelagic interaction. Inside of Malakal Harbor, in the area around Koror, we do have some very impressive World War II wrecks, as Palau was occupied by the Japanese during World War II. So some of our highlights, probably one of our more famous dive sites is German Channel. And what you've got there is you can actually see that long stretch, that long thin stretch is the channel itself. Now, we don't actually dive the channel. The channel was created by the Germans during the late 1890s. They're mining phosphate on the far island of Angar. And rather than go all the way around the outside of the reef, they decided they would dredge and dynamite through a section of the reef to cut down on travel time from Angar to Koror. Just outside of that is kind of this natural bowl where everything slopes down and away. So year round, we're lucky enough to usually get mantas year round here, where they will come in and clean in the 1s and 2s. However, in our winter months, from usually November through about March, those winter currents bring in huge plankton blooms in the afternoon. And so we can get some really amazing feeding activity at times as well. You get these big bait balls of, these are the blue streak fusiliers, also black snapper, and they'll feed on the plankton. And there we go, there's the black snapper. And then what will also then happen is the manta will come in, and the manta will migrate to this area during these months, fatten up over the winter, in the early spring, they run their mating dance. We do have residents that are there year round, but our wintertime manta population in German Channel is where we'll see the most. I think the most we've ever had at once that I recall counting was we had 18 in the area on a single dive. And while you're up there, you're very, very shallow. You're in about 6 meters of water, and the manta can literally sometimes be barrel rolling directly in front of you. Some of the neat things here is we get such a wide variety. We have corners, channels, tunnels. When we say size tunnel, people think often it's small and narrow. It's actually a massive, massive tunnel. And the neat thing is once we come out the eyes, we turn along the wall, and you've got beautiful wall dive to shallow up and enjoy a nice 60-minute dive. The crown jewel of the Oolong area, our Oolong Channel. And to me, it's one of the best dives that we have here in Palau. And so you can kind of, on the outside edges, we'll use reef hooks, we'll hook in, and you'll usually get big schools of sharks that will just come in, ride the lip of the bowl around. You can actually have these big gray reef sharks that are coming within 1 to 2 meters of you. They're just cruising and soaring on the current. Big schools of pelagics, you'll get barracuda, dogtooth tuna, sometimes hunting the smaller bait fish out front. And then once it's time to go, we, unhook ourselves and then drift up the channel. Oolong Channel itself has 83 species of coral in this one channel alone. In case you're wondering, that's more coral diversity in one dive site than the entire Caribbean. So we can get some really, really neat stuff in here. This picture that's shown is actually one of the largest known collections of cabbage coral in the world. It's probably about 30 meters long and about 7 meters high, and just creates this beautiful overlapping shelter where we can find anemone fish, soldier fish, squirrel fish, all sorts of neat things. June, July, and sometimes in August, we'll get groupers that will come into the Oolong area to spawn at night. 2 weeks leading from kind of half moon up to new moon, the grouper, as they move in, you'll start to see more and more sharks moving in. And so we'll do night dives in that area, especially at that time. Now, the spawning itself, we usually don't dive. That can get rather aggressive with sharks, and it also tends to happen at around 1 o'clock in the morning. But the night dives out there, still with all the fish and the increased shark presence, we can get some really cool lemon sharks hunting. We've had little ambatas, the oceanic blacktips, hunting through there as well. And you'll start to see actually more increased activity from those gray reef sharks and the white tip reef sharks as well. Big drop off is back out in the Nemilise area. Alex loves this site.
I love it.
It's actually called Big Drop Off for a very real reason. The top of the reef is only about 6 meters deep, and then it's a sheer wall that drops down to about 60 to 80 meters. And along that wall, as a leftover from World War II, is what you can see right there hanging up. And that's Barnum's Ball. There was an Admiral Barnum in the Navy, and he had the bright idea to stretch these massive lengths of ball and chain between the two islands to keep the Japanese in Koror and Babeldub from resupplying the Japanese that were over on the island of Peleliu, where a major battle happened. As of now, there's only one ball hanging on the reef. The chain itself, you have massive, massive links. The ball is probably about 2 to 3 meters in diameter. And the whole thing is just covered in soft corals. So it's probably one of our best macro dives here as well. It's the chance to look for for a lot of the smaller things in Palau. People thought the balls were there to deter things, but the balls were actually hollow. They were used to actually float and support the weight of the chain, because if they didn't float the chain, it would actually just pull right out of the islands. One of the things that we do at the end usually towards the end of the trip, is Chandelier Cave, located right in Malakal Harbor. It's a fresh limestone cave at a very, very shallow depth. We have these amazing stalactite formations, which come down to the water, some breaking down below the water, and that kind of creates that chandelier effect. The neat thing is you've got 4 distinct air chambers as you move through. The average depth that you're diving in here is only about 6 to 8 meters deep. And the air in the chambers is all breathable. So the neat thing is you can kind of come in, ooh and ah, and explore. For those of you that have done cenotes in Mexico, it's a very similar structure. And then out front, in only about 3 meters of water out front of Chandelier Cave, hiding in all the little rubble coral out there, we can oftentimes find our little mandarin fish flirting around out there. And yes, indeed, Jellyfish Lake is back open. Back in 2016, we had a massive drought here in Palau. And during that drought, it raised the salinity levels and the temperature levels of the lake. And this caused a massive die-off in the population. In about a 3-month span, we went from 8 million to about 300,000. And then 2 years later, after the salinity levels and the temperature levels finally came back to a more level where life could be sustained. In a 3-month span, we went from 10,000 jellies is when we first started to see that. And then in 3 months, the population was already up to 1 million. And then within a year, we went back to our holding capacity between 6 to 8 million of the jellies in the lake right now. Now, a lot of people always ask, jellyfish, do they sting? And the answer is yes, they do still sting. They still have their pneumatocytes. However, the nature of that sting is so intensely mild, you would have to be some of your most sensitive skin, like your lips or your private parts. It's a pretty unique experience to be in this lake surrounded by, just millions and millions of jelly. Yeah, it does make for some phenomenal pictures. And they need the sun for photosynthesis for the brown algae that's inside. So they'll stay within the first 3 meters of the water column. And the brighter it is, the closer they are up to the surface. So you can really capture some truly amazing images. There's enough space that we can spread out. The big thing that we try to do is we will usually do Jellyfish Lake first thing in the morning towards the end of the trip. Because for us, we like being the only people in there. And that's the advantage that you get with the Liveaboard, is that we're oftentimes out on dive sites or out places like Jellyfish Lake when there's no other tourists around. 11 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a 3-ring circus because you've got 10 to 15 boats in there. We're, I would say 90% of the time, the only ones in the lake when we go in the morning. Many people's favorite dive, Blue Corner. And the neat thing for Blue Corner is it's one of these underwater plateaus. So what happens is the current comes, it hits the wall, it pushes up. And that's what creates that interesting experience where we hook in, because that pushes up and pushes back and comes across the top of the reef. And then you've got such a steep drop off. It's 80 to 100 meters plus deep off of those drop offs. And so you hook in and it just brings in all these nutrients and all these pelagics. So you get the pelagics coming from the deep drop off, the reef fish coming right there. And it's one of those currents where you can just sit, hook in and fly while the gray reef sharks, white tips, black tip reef sharks all just circle around. And there's just such an amazing diversity of life here. We get the sickle fin or the pick handle barracudas, big eye barracuda, giant barracuda, very, very friendly Napoleon wrasse who lives here, who we've named Al. But we have 3 resident male Napoleons that really love to see themselves. So if you've got a camera, if you've got a big dome port, they will actually oftentimes they'll come right up to the dome port to see their own reflection. This is a dive where reef hooks are pretty much always needed. Some of the special things about here in Palau is in the full moon and in the new moon, we have 2 big, massive spawning aggregations. Now these happen every month, from about 5 days up to 5 days up to and including the full moon. The red snapper aggregate on a dive site called Shark City, and then they'll spawn early morning. And so for the red snapper, we're looking at anywhere between 5 to 8,000 fish are aggregating together. They'll start on the reef. They'll do their big dance. They'll come together. You'll start to see some sexual dimorphism, which you can actually see in some of the photograph here. You can see that white streak on some of the fish, and that's the female changing her colors to let people know that they are getting ready to spawn. And they will just all start chasing, they'll go from maneuvering around to chasing each other around. They'll go out into the blue, and then they'll kind of shoot up in these big columns. And the female will release her eggs, the males will release their sperm, and it's all carried out into the open ocean to give them the best chance for carrying on their life. This is your best chance for seeing bull sharks and oceanic black tips as well. And these are sharks that are going to be anywhere from 1.5 meters up to 2.5 to 3 meters for the bull sharks. We usually will see anywhere between 2 to 5 bull shark, and there's usually anywhere from, we've had up to 8 of the oceanic black tips come through. The warning about the full moon snapper is that the currents out there at Shark City, it is a deeper dive site, and the currents out there can be incredibly strong. So it's it's probably one of our more advanced dives. On the new moon, we have the bumphead parrotfish spawning. And in this, you can get anywhere from 500 to 3,000 bumpheads will come together to aggregate and spawn on one of our dive sites called Sandbar. And again, it's an early morning dive. And what will happen is early in the morning, we'll get in and you'll see the fish. They'll start milling around. They'll come from the shallows out to the deep. And so we'll start the dive usually in about 6 meters, kneeling in the sand as the fish are aggregating. They'll leave the reef. They'll start highwaying back and forth up and down the reef. Then they'll go out over the blue water to spawn. All of our diving here is drift dives. So everybody must have an SMB. So the boat drivers will pick us up and we keep together as a group.
The short little clip of the snapper spawning.
The rise to shallow waters signals that the main event will soon begin. Their readiness is apparent in color changes. A large, clear band appears on the sides of some. It is not yet known whether this coloration is shown by males or females, or by both, but soon after, the activity increases and the spawning begins. The spawning period is brief. It lasts only a few minutes. Males must hurry to find a mate in a very short window of time. Then they must compete with dozens of other contenders for the best position to fertilize the eggs released by the female. Massive volumes of eggs and milk are released into the ocean with the hopes of being fertilized, but the dangers to their survival appear even before conception.
One of the other things that we like to do is called blackwater diving. We usually do at least one per trip. We set up more of a bonfire style as we fix lights to the edge of the reef right near deep drop-offs. We let those cook for about 10 to 15 minutes. And what that does is that brings in all the weird stuff from the depth. It brings all the most interesting things from the deep. You'll start to see post-larval fish. So every fish starts in a pelagic life out in the open ocean. And then as they mature and get bigger, they will start to come to the reef. So you'll see these small fish, like I've seen giant barracuda the size of my pinky. They're still almost translucent. You can actually still see some of their internal organs, but they still have that markings of the fish. It's just a really interesting and unique experience. For some non-diving activities, if you did not know, on the island of Palau, the southernmost island in the main part of the chain is the island of Palau. And that was a site of a massive battle between the U.S. Marines and the occupying Japanese forces during World War II. And so one of the things that we do offer is a World War II land tour on the day that we go down to Palau. Now, if you do the land tour, there is an additional fee. The interesting thing about Palau is this was a major change, break from the Japanese battle tactics. Before, they kind of always stormed the beachfront and they did these big, wild, kamikaze runs where they would just storm the beach to try to stop them from taking the beach. In Palau, they dug hundreds, if not thousands, of caves in and along through the through the limestone rock island, and they called it defense in depth. So they had one fallback position after the other, and so the battle, which was supposed to take 4 days, ended up taking 72. Other things that we can arrange for you after the trip would be kind of one of the big things that we recommend as well, is there's a scenic flight that you can do across the islands. It's a 40-minute flight on a Cessna taking off from the airport. You fly over Palau, the Siren, 70 islands. You'll actually see all of the area that we did. And that's something the cruise director on board can help anybody book. But it's an absolutely beautiful and spectacular way to see Palau. Now, the nice thing is it is on a Cessna. They keep a maximum altitude of 1,000 feet or 300 meters. And so it's one of those things that you can do, like the day after disembarkation. You don't have the same flying after diving rules. They don't ascend to a height where the change in pressure becomes problematic for decompression sickness.
Awesome, guys. This has been a fabulous presentation. I must say, Eric, I have not ever seen that many bumphead parrotfish cuddled together like that. So that's been pretty amazing. Okay, so Irene is going to she's been monitoring the questions.
So there's a number of questions concerning the PCR test requirements, for example, day 1, day 5, and then 3 days before you leave. How do you get these done while the boat is out?
The day 1 test is done upon arrival. So literally, when you land, when people land, the test is done there at the airport. The day 5 test, right now, the only way we can do that, the day 5 test, is we would essentially miss a morning of diving because it's only done at the hospital. What we don't know is how much longer Palau is going to be doing their testing routines like this.
I think we'll see this change. For example, here in Thailand, we had the same thing, testing day 1, day 3, day 5, day 7 kind of thing. But here they've just scrapped that. So we're thinking more countries in this part of the world just do testing before you come and then testing on arrival, and that'll be it. It's just going to take time for that to filter through.
Because with only one flight coming in at the moment, it's easier because that way we can come in, we'd skip the morning dive, get everybody to the hospital, run through the testing, come back, and then we can kind of do our end of the itinerary stuff. We can do our chandelier cave, wreck, and a night dive. So you'd really only miss one dive of the trip for that day 5 test, and then going back out and enjoying the rest of it. And we're just going to have to stay flexible with that.
If you book a trip for 2023 or even fall of 22, things will be very different than what they are today.
Water temperatures throughout the year? When is
28 to 29 degrees year round.
And what's the best season or best time of year to dive Oolong Channel?
Year round. There is, for Oolong Channel, it is one of those year round dive sites.
Is there a rainy or a stormy season?
So we have Palau, we average 15 centimeters a month in rainfall during our dry season. And in our rainy season, which is June, July, and August, that increases to about 22 to 25 centimeters a month. It will rain almost every day. However, it usually rains in the evening.
There's so many dive sites that are actually protected. You don't get the waves. You may not be able to do Blue Corner one day, but you could do it later on in the trip. So I wouldn't be too worried about having, bad weather for a trip to Palau.
How are the dives decided on?
The cruise director is really the one who will set the itinerary. And what we're looking at, what we do when we're setting our itinerary is we're looking at lunar phases and tides, and kind of doing our best to give everybody the best overall experience here in Palau. So you can get to the dive site during the ideal currents and tides for those. We like to warm people up. So we'll usually start on easier sites on day one, and then building and growing that experience. And we may repeat dive sites, if it's really hitting, if something's really happening, we'll go back.
Do you offer nitrox?
For nitrox, we do have a partial pressure membrane system, and so we pump 32% nitrox. We do, in all honesty, most of your diving here in Palau is in that 15 to 20 meter range. So it's that really sweet spot for nitrox where you're actually going to have the air for hour-long dives, and this just kind of gives you the more of the ability to stay where things are at, at the ideal depths for the full duration of the dive. Usually the first and the last day are 3 dive days, and then everything else is a 4 dive day where we'll do 3 during the day and 1 in one night dive.
Is there a recommended number of dives for these trips and level of training in order to do some of these challenging dive sites?
We recommend 30 to 50 dives in advanced open water for Palau. And then the big thing is, experience with current is a big bonus. But like I said, we will build people up and move people, and bring people along and build people up. We're not going to throw somebody into a screaming current first thing off the bat, because we may get out there and it may be a stronger current than any of us anticipated. Oftentimes we can move a dive if we get out there, and if it's not safe, we're going to move the dive.
Where's the nearest decompression chamber?
The nearest decompression chamber is on the island of Mayuns, here in Koror. So the nice thing is, no matter where we are in during the itinerary, we're never further than an hour and 15 minutes by speedboat to the hospital where the recompression chamber is.
James is commenting that they were in Palau. There was virtually no current the entire week. How often do you experience no currents? It happens sometimes. We tend to see stronger currents around the moons. Sometimes, around the moon, so full moon and new moon, we tend to experience stronger currents. But nature is nature.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the time. This is probably the longest presentation we have done, and everybody is still here. No, that's okay. Lots of good information. I do want to say, obviously, Liveaboard is one option in Palau, and we sometimes combine it with either a few additional nights hotel or with Truck Lagoon or Yap. So there's 2 other options in Palau that in Micronesia that we can often package this with. So I just wanted to let you guys know where we are going next in 2 weeks. We will be going to the Maldives and Sri Lanka, a combination that's with Aggressor Liveaboards. And we hope to see all of you back here then. Don't forget that you'll get another entry into our fall contest. And with that, thank you guys. You can go on with your day while we go and either have dinner or go to bed, depending on which time zone we're in, right? Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for all the preparation. And we do hope that we are earning your business. Thank you for coming back every other week. And you can see our contact information right here on our website. Make sure that you sign up for our newsletter so you get notifications for next time. And we look forward to sending you to Palau. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Eric. And Mark, the owner, has been on and listening to everything as well. So we appreciate all of you guys. And we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Petros. Nice to meet you guys.